during the bulletin, I will be having a conversation with the Member of Parliament for that particular area, Fred Kaponde, to just give us some more details about what really is happening in Mount Elgon. Now, members of the National Assembly are on day three of the retreat in Mombasa, where members are getting guidance on the proper execution of their mandate. And our senior parliamentary reporter, Patrick Amimo, is in Mombasa. He's been there from day one. He will now be joining us live to give us an update on what is happening in that particular retreat. A very good afternoon to you, Patrick. What is happening day three of this particular retreat?
Good afternoon, Akisa. The induction seminar is still ongoing with very pertinent issues to do with the party membership and discipline, things to do with the code of ethics, matters to do with how to deal with corruption, and other pieces of legislation. Also, things to do with the separation of power between the three arms of government. And just now, joining me is the leader of minority in the National Assembly, John Mbadi, just to share with us some of the concerns to do with the budget making process. Yesterday I saw you're really concerned about these issues of budget making. It's like the executive is still controlling this process here.
Thank you very much, Patrick. First of all, I want to say that before 2010 Constitution was promulgated, the budget process in this country actually was a president's budget. The president was the one making the budget, of course, through the Minister for Finance then, or the Treasury. And Parliament was basically a rubber stamp. You could not change, amend, or introduce any changes in the budget of a country. But with the new constitution and us embracing presidential system, it was the people of Kenya who decided through Chapter 12 of the Constitution to bring changes, an overhaul, a complete overhaul, I would say, on the budget-making process, where Parliament is now given more capacity, given more responsibility, and given more power, so to speak, to be the ones looking at the estimates as generated by the executive. Of course, still the executive has a role because it is the executive that is supposed to implement a budget. It's the executive that should be having a manifesto to implement, and is the custodian of various plans, be it Vision 2030, medium-term economic plan, or whether it is yearly economic plans. But all that put together has to be addressed by Parliament in the form, and that is why when you look at Article 221 of the Constitution, it talks about budget estimates being presented to Parliament by the Cabinet Secretary for Finance. It's not budget, but budget estimates. And so what Parliament needs to do is to look at Article 201 of the Constitution, look at the principles of public finance, and look at the budget vis-a-vis those principles to determine whether the principles have been followed, one of which is equity, another one is national interest. You also need to look at the accountability and transparency in the preparation of the budget. Now, the concern we have had, and which we continue to have, and which was expressed yesterday, is that this financial year, 2018-2019, is going to see the 8th budget since the promulgation of a new constitution. A budget that should have been dealt with differently. But there are fears, and there are genuine fears, that it is still business as usual. We are operating like nothing has changed, that Kenyans have not changed anything. And this is basically because members of Parliament have not appreciated the distinction and separation of powers between the executive and the legislatures, to be able to appreciate that we have a higher responsibility now to look at a budget with a very clear mind and objectivity, so that we do not marginalize certain areas in terms of allocation of resource envelope.
Looking at the departmental committees, they are the ones that are supposed to scrutinize some of these budgets when they come from the either departments or ministries, and there are concerns that in some departments or ministries there is now the hidden amounts which maybe could end up being benefiting the corrupt cartels.
Exactly, and if you listen to what I said yesterday, that I think now our departmental committees, because the budget committee is the one with the responsibility, but the budget committee does not have all that sufficient time to interact with this budget in a way that they would be able to comb it with a tooth comb, so to speak, to be able to isolate and identify and isolate the issues of concern in the budget. So the departmental committees need to look at the policy direction of each and every ministry and government department, what I would call MDS, to be able to interact with the budgets of those ministries, identify and isolate issues that need to be addressed, so that when they present, because always the budget committee gives opportunity to the various departmental committee chairs to present their findings and their report on each and every vote. That time we now need to emphasize that the various departmental committees need to engage more with the budget, so that they do more scrutiny of those budget estimates, because there are a lot of issues that need to be addressed, and budget committee should now focus more on issues of revenue, issues of fiscal policies, the macroeconomic level, so that we also even interrogate the issues of debt. The issue of debt management in this country has suffered because the Budget and Appropriations Committee that is supposed to give it more time looks more at the expenditure side, because for obvious reasons that people tend to be to always divert their attention on where should you cut, where are you spending this money, but paying little attention to where that money is coming from and the effect it can have on the economy if it is not properly managed.
Yes, talking about the debt burden is something that is a concern, and we even heard this morning that if the country is not careful, then we are heading towards a dangerous zone, and also we can see the revenue. KRA is not able to generate a lot of that maybe the projected local revenue. Now, how should we go about? How should Parliament go about maybe stamping its authority to ensure that we don't get into that crisis?
In summary, I want to say that this is a topic that I think, as the leader of my minority, I owe it to the people of Kenya to engage Kenyans in a better debate on this topic of debt sustainability and debt management. But just in a nutshell and a quick summary of it is that I think we as a parliament are letting Kenyans down in terms of managing debt. I've heard my colleagues, I've heard the Treasury talk, comparing Kenya to other jurisdictions, giving statistics and ratios, and saying that we can manage our debt. It is a fallacy. It is, in my view, it is a misplaced confidence that Kenyans are being given from the Jubilee side. I want to put the following points into perspective. Number one, Parliament's role in managing debt has been reduced and minimized by our own carelessness. When we remember that all along, previously, before the 2014, the budget ceiling was always being approved by Parliament. Anytime the government wanted to increase the budget ceiling, the debt ceiling, they always came to Parliament for that to express approval. The last time we did that was 2014, when we increased the debt level to 2.5 trillion. As we speak, the debt level is at 4.5 trillion plus, meaning we are 2 trillion beyond what we had already envisaged. But this is because in the PFM Act we made a provision that the debt ceiling will be approved by Parliament through a legislation, which we came with the 2015 public finance regulations, and say that it should be 50% of the GDP. Now, that is a moving ratio and a moving target. Now, the GDP as it is today is projected at 8.6 trillion, which means 50% of it is supposed to be 4.3 trillion. Yet the government is already, what we are borrowing is 4.5, which means we are violating the provisions of the law without even any much thought given to it, simply because we decided to create ambiguous, amorphous, moving target as debt ceiling. And it is very dangerous. I want to say then two last things. Number one is that this financial year, the financial year that we are going into, the debt repayment is going to be at 316 billion, more than it was previously. Now, if you look at the additional revenue that we are likely to generate, it's 200 billion, meaning the increase in debt repayment is more than the increase in revenue that we are likely to collect as a country by 116 billion. What does that tell you, or what dangers does that pose? The danger is that we are soon going to reach a limit or a level that we will not be able to generate enough revenue to keep pace with the increase in the debt. Finally, I want to talk about the monies that we are borrowing. It is clear in law and in the Constitution. If you just go to Article 201, you will read it there. You read the Chapter 12 on debt management. You will find that it is specific and clear that in terms of debts, we must be able to do it in a way that we guarantee that the future generation is going to benefit from what we do. And it goes ahead to say that we must demonstrate the projects which we finance through that debt. The Jubilee administration from 2013, from 2014 when we first borrowed the first Eurobond, has failed completely to tell Kenyans in whichever way, both officially, informally and formally, on the projects that we fund through the borrowings.
Thank you so much, Mheshimiwa John Badi, who is also the